Our final recipient this evening will be honored by Mason Horodisky. Help me welcome Mr. Horodisky to the stage to honor Scott MacFarlane. First and foremost, congratulations to the other recipients tonight. It's well-deserved, and you made it incredibly hard for me to follow those two fantastic speeches, but here it goes. About December of last year, Scott reached out to me and asked that I induct him into the 2021 class of the Highland Hall of Fame. As someone who I've looked up to and admired, I was, of course, honored to speak in front of all of you today. But as much as I wanted to write my speech right then and there, a good journalist always knows to let their story develop first. And I'm very thankful, especially in this year alone, that I let Scott's story develop even more. But let's start from the beginning. Scott MacFarlane is a proud graduate of the Highland High School class of 1994. During his time in Highland, his passion for journalism blossomed, leading him to travel from the Hudson Valley all the way up north to attend the greatest school on God's green earth, Syracuse University. I know we're supposed to be unbiased as journalists, but come on. It was there Scott would take his first steps into the world of journalism by involving himself in the many student organizations on campus, of which he still involves himself in today as a beacon for young journalists beginning their career in journalism, and is still to this day one of the most respected and helpful alumni that the Newhouse School of Public Communications has to offer. Upon his graduation from Syracuse, the Orangeman would begin his career as an investigative reporter, working for local affiliate stations in Grand Rapids, Detroit, Cleveland, and is now an investigative reporter with NBC4 in Washington, D.C. I mentioned before that I was glad that I waited to write my speech on Scott because in this last year alone, he has been as busy maybe as he has ever been. So far this year, Scott has been the go-to source when it comes to the trials and prosecutions during the January 6th Capitol insurrection. He's been a featured guest on MSNBC, providing reliable insight on every single court case of those involved. Even almost a year later, there's still plenty of work to be done, but Scott is more than ready, willing, and able to take up that mantle and provide the American public with clarity of what happened on that day in Washington. But thankfully, with as busy as he's been, he's back home with all of us today. Now, while I covered a good amount about Scott's career there, the way I did it was intentional. One of the first things that I was taught at Syracuse University in broadcasting is a thing called the inverted pyramid. Basically, to summarize that incredibly briefly, it basically says that in broadcast journalism, you want to always start with the most important part of the story first. While Scott's time at Highland came first, it's also one of the most important parts of his story. He's a proud Highland High School graduate because of his time here in Highland. Scott is extremely proud that people know about Highland, New York because of him, whether it's talking off camera for a man on the street interview, all the way up to having conversations about our small but proud community to then sitting President Barack Obama. As someone who is right there reporting in our nation's capital during one of our nation's most turbulent political climates, he's just as happy to hear about which one of the many Highland pizza joints people like best. Sorry. He'll go from talking to some of the biggest names in politics today to giving career advice to another Highland Husky that thought it might be cool to yell about sports on TV in the middle of West Texas. That's true. Yet, yes, Scott MacFarlane is a fantastic journalist, but he's an even better person, and as proud as he is to be here this evening, I'm even more proud to call him my mentor, my friend, and the newest inductee into the Highland Hall of Fame. Ladies and gentlemen, Scott MacFarlane.
Mason's all grown up. It's going to be a pleasure to watch him on television, to see him for the first time. So when my oldest son, Jonathan, was 3 years old, it's 8 years ago now, he saw me on TV for the first time. And according to his mother, he was running around the living room playing with toys and looks up at the TV and goes, "Mommy, Mommy, Daddy's on TV. Mommy, Mommy, can you please put Sesame Street back on?" So that's going to happen for you one day. I can't tell you what an honor it is to stand at a podium that has Highland Central Schools on it. It means an awful lot to me. I thank you all for giving me an excuse to come to my favorite place on earth. And you've done that. consigned Darlene and Hobie. 34 years as a teacher. That is transcendent selflessness. And then you serve on the school board. Then you serve on the library board. And then apparently you are the world's best campaign manager. Hobie was a friend of mine. Hobie was a classmate of mine, a schoolmate of mine. He was a teammate of mine. We were on the same basketball team, and I remember clearly we took these long, meandering bus rides to these godforsaken places like Fallsburg, Liberty. I think we were in Oneonta at one point. And I remember this because we would take even longer rides on the bench together. We were not the greatest players on the basketball team. But I remember Hobie was the greatest guy. His daughter described it perfectly. He was funny, he was smart, he was meticulous. You know, when Hobie spoke, you listened. And I was watching and rooting for him as he became a great dad, a great husband, and a really good lawyer. And I was watching from afar and rooting for Hobie in 2013 when he was in the World Series of the legal profession, the U.S. District Courthouse, the federal courthouse in White Plains. And he was arguing on behalf of the Port Jervis Police Department and the fine officers at the Port Jervis Police Department. And I read his briefs because I was rooting for him. And he was just that. He was meticulous. He was smart. He was sharp. He was good. And it doesn't surprise me he was such a success. Because I want to say on this night, at this place, it is never a surprise when somebody from Highland, New York is a success. Because we do just that. We all root for each other. Now, I'm in Washington, D.C., which means I get to meet people from all 50 states and all corners of the country. Please recognize, this is unique here. We all look out for each other. We all look after each other. When I first met Mason a few years ago, I told him proudly, your grandpa was my soccer coach. Grandpa Frank H. He was my best soccer coach. And then it occurred to me a few days later after I left, he wasn't my soccer coach. He was a soccer coach in the Highland Youth Soccer League, the World Cup of Youth Soccer League. But I remember clearly, all these years later, he would pull me aside after matches and say, Scott, I'm so proud of you. You did so well. Here's what you can do better next time. He was coaching up me. Because in Highland, New York, your players aren't just the ones on your team. It's everybody in the league. Darlene, you taught for 34 years. You're here tonight because your students weren't just the ones in your classroom. It was everybody who walked in the school building. That's how Highland rolls. That's what we are. Everybody looks out for each other. Everyone looks after each other. Now, it's foggy to me. My classmates can correct me if I'm wrong. But I think when I was in high school, I was a freaking hot mess. I'm pretty confident I was. They'll tell you otherwise, but you know. I mean, I was so desperate to fit in. I was young for my class. I was a little socially behind. So I tried everything. I tried the basketball team with mixed results. I played baseball with Hobie too. I was in the newspaper, the yearbook, the band, the jazz band, the quiz bowl. And so back then, the quiz bowl, after being on the radio, was on television. So they bring you up to old Channel 62 in Kingston. And both of its viewers. And I was a freshman, and I was at the hottest of hot messes as a freshman. I couldn't comb my hair right. I didn't know how to tie a tie. I was fighting a bloody and ugly battle with growing a mustache. And everybody was losing in that battle. And we go up to Channel 62 for Quiz Bowl. I'm a freshman, and we're with these seniors and these juniors who are brilliant. These are smart kids, and I'm just a knucklehead. I don't know anything. But there we are, Channel 62 for the Quiz Bowl match. First match of the year. My first time doing this. We're playing like Stack and Kill or somebody. And the lights go on, the announcer introduces the team, and the TV show begins. First 8 questions out of the gate. I got them all. I buzzed in first and got them all. And I wasn't the smartest. I didn't know anything more than they knew. At that moment, I wasn't overcome as I should have been by the lights and the cameras. And that's an obscure skill. It's a strange thing, but it's a small thing, except it was one of the most impactful moments of my life. It was the first time I felt like something clicked. I'm good at something. And it was more than that though. On the other side of that camera, as a young knucklehead 14-year-old, I could see on the other side of that lens in my mind's eye, Highland's watching. Coach Frank is watching. Mr. Bowen is watching. My parents' friends are watching. My friends are watching. And you know what they're doing? They're rooting for me. Like our town does. They're rooting for me. Do you recognize how important that is? What that means to a kid to know the whole town's rooting for him? The whole town's looking after him. The whole town is coaching him up and teaching him. What that means to a new parent who moves here, who knows the whole town has got their back and their kids' back. What that means to a new teacher at Highland Central Schools, to know the whole town has got your back. We're all rooting for you. That's a distinctive thing. And I took that moment, that small moment, and tried to move it forward. And when I was a high school senior, I started working at WKIP Radio, the flamethrower of Poughkeepsie, and Q92 Radio, way above my sales. But I had that confidence. I knew on the other side of the airwaves, somebody from Highland was listening. You know what they were doing? They were rooting for me. And now, when I'm on television, there are days without a script, without a teleprompter, I'm speaking to 2 million people, which can be intimidating for some. But I go back to that Quiz Bowl match, where I know there's somebody out there among those 2 million who's from Highland, and they're rooting for me, no matter who they are. That's what our community does. And that is a distinctive and profound thing you all have created. And the kids like me, kids like Hobie, benefited from. It's really no surprise. And I think we're all at our best when we channel that. We take that and bring it elsewhere in the world. I know when I went to Syracuse University out of Highland, I brought that spirit. And I met my great friend, like Jamie, who's here, my wife, Lisa, our kids. Their wins are my wins. Their losses are my losses. Their lives are my life because I'm from Highland. My classmates, when I see their kids grow up, I see Ryan and Jordan and Cameron and all your great children, their wins are my wins. Their losses are my losses. I'm from Highland. And Mason can tell you, I'm in a cutthroat business. We are a brutal bunch of people in television. But those of us who channel our inner Highland, who congratulate our colleagues and our competitors, who treat our colleagues and competitors like they're part of the family, we're the ones who succeed. We're the ones who can be honored on nights like tonight. It means an awful lot to us. I'm grateful for that. And Mason mentioned it briefly, but I want to leave you with a story. There was a day 10 years ago in July when I had the rare opportunity to have a one-on-one interview with the President of the United States, President Obama. Journalists don't get that opportunity very often. And here was the plan. They said you get 7 minutes. We set you up in the White House map room. You get 7 minutes. You don't get 8 minutes. You don't get 7 minutes and 30 seconds. You get 7 minutes. This schedule is like a fine tune. And so I show up. And there's 3 camera people, there's lighting artists, and there's 2 chairs. One for me, one for the president. He's not here yet, so I sit down and we wait. The president walks in, shake his hand, introduce yourself, sit down. I'm ready to go. I got my questions all locked down. You know what I'm gonna use every one of the seconds I get in those 7 minutes. And I'm about to start. And one of the lighting artists says, hold on, we got a lighting problem, we gotta make an adjustment. You two just make some small talk and we'll get going in a minute. Let me tell you something. There is nothing in life that prepares you for the moment you're told to make small talk. I had my questions ready. Here's what I had going on in my life at that point. My oldest son was 1 year old. He had just learned how to say the word poopy. I didn't think the president wanted to hear about that. I think I had a reasonably good fantasy football team. Anyhow, he took the lead because he's the president. He's good at moments like that. He says, Scott, tell me where you're from. So I think the correct answer would be to tell him where I lived at that moment. I live in suburban DC. I've got a wife and a newborn, and we're doing great. But it was muscle memory or it was something bigger. It said, I'm from Highland. He says, great, what state is that? and I explained to him all the virtues of Highland, New York. And there's a lot of virtues. But I don't think it was just muscle memory or instinct. I think when you were from here, when you were raised by this community, with people like Coach Frank people like Darlene, you're friends with people like Hobie. It's just ingrained in you. Highland's always where I'm from. And anything I accomplish is because I'm from here. I have an advantage. I'm from Highland, New York, where everybody roots for you. Everybody looks out for you. Everyone's on your team. You have created something unique in this community. It's distinctive, and it strengthens and inspires all of us and makes everything possible. I just want to say, I love you all for what you've done for me. I love being from Highland, New York, and I will always be from Highland, New York. I thank you.